My 29F husband, 29M, is a chronic people pleaser and it's ruining our family. Throw away because this is so embarrassing. My 29F husband, 29M, is a chronic people pleaser. I think this comes from his childhood where his parents were very concerned with public appearance and mildly neglectful towards him. He's always giving everyone his best and going above and beyond except for me. I get the leftovers and it's exhausting. We grew up together and dated in high school and college. We come from a moderately conservative and Christian background, so we got married when he accepted a job in another state so that we get comfortable living together. And we just wanted to be married. We struggled through our dating and engagement because his parents didn't want him to be with me. Finally at our wedding he essentially told them to F off, and it set us up for a great couple of years of marriage without that stress. I was really proud of him for finally getting out from under their influence. I thought the people-pleasing would end. Life was easy. We were great partners and genuinely just enjoyed our time together as dinks. About a year and a half into his career he was pretty much forced to travel for work unexpectedly. He was assigned to a project about 8 hours away. We were told it would be about a month but then stretched into about 8 months. His need to impress everyone came into play here. He wouldn't ask questions or threaten to leave or look for other jobs. It was his first job and he wanted to be loyal to his company. This left me alone in another state where I knew nobody. I was home alone MF with no answers of when this would end. We eventually got pregnant with our first and I wanted to come home to be near my family, which meant near his too since we grew up in the same town. This meant he had to quit this job and find a new one. He struggled with this but he did it. He spends year at this other company and we have our baby. His original company contacted him and wanted to bring him back on to expand to our current city. I was hesitant because of their last treatment of us, but he was all over it. He worked remotely for about 2 years and worked to establish business here. We had another baby and got pregnant with our third in this time. A lot went on behind the scenes, but essentially he was promised there was a lot of work here and it ended up being bid by his former employees instead of him. Business there was drying up and his employees were encroaching into his territory here. He wouldn't say anything or fight it. Because of this he was assigned to work on a project 8 hours away from home. I was 12 weeks pregnant when he left. He was working 13 12-hour days, so I was in our town pregnant, caring for 2 toddlers and our home and working 2 night shifts a week. We'd go weeks without seeing him, but on long stretches between my shifts I'd load up our toddlers and drive 8 hours to spend a couple hours with him. We'd rent an Airbnb and he would have 1 day off every 2 weeks to hang out. It was hell. He got reassigned to another job only 2 hours away and worked there from March until my due date in early May. He was still loyal to this company. He said he wanted to use their insurance and paternity leave, and then we were going to move the entire family to his new worksite. Once baby came I realized this was impossible. I begged him to quit. When he was home on paternity leave I realized just how broken our marriage had become. I was resentful and felt completely unappreciated. He never really thanked me for bearing the brunt of everything for his career. I know he was miserable too, but any acknowledgement of how much I was giving would have gone a long way. He was still so concerned with being a good employee that he sacrificed our family. Our 22-month-old wasn't even walking when he left. He's missed a huge fraction of her life. I understand that men feel a huge amount of pressure to support their families financially, but I offered to go to work full-time and carry insurance. I'm a nurse and we are always short. I could have supported us. Now to current day he quit 2 weeks ago and already has a new job lined up, same pay, better benefits. He took off a month still to just try to repair our marriage and family, but I'm not sure I want to put that work in anymore. 2 weeks ago he left for 4 nights for his best friend's bachelor party across the county. He left me with 3 kids under 3, one being 3 weeks old. This weekend he left for the actual wedding. He just can't say no to anyone. He places everyone before me because he'd rather me be upset with him than anyone else. I suspect he knows I love him unconditionally and I'll forgive him eventually. Last night he was DD for the wedding party. He was out until the early hours. I was up with the baby and noticed that he hadn't read a text I had sent. He was supposed to be at the airport by then. He ended up sleeping through all his alarms and missing his flight. I feel like something in me finally just snapped. He looks so amazing to all his buddies not drinking and getting everyone where they needed to be. But to me he looks like a selfish ass. He put everyone else above me and his 3 little kids. I am home with a month-old baby that screams unless I am holding him and 2 toddlers that are getting into everything. And he's sitting in a quiet airport after a weekend of partying. I don't know if it's the postpartum hormones or I am waking up to the fact that everyone else and his image will always come before me and now my children. It's always been this way. He'd go all out for everyone in high school and college and I got him once he was exhausted. I've never gotten his best and I don't know how to convey to him that I need it. I feel like I've said it a million times over the past 11 years and I think now that it's impacting my kids I'm finally done. He's a great human. He loves his children and he's the best dad. They adore him and he treats them so well. He loves me. He used to love me a lot more but life gets busy. I know it would break him if I left but I'm so tired of being disappointed and hoping I'll get his best. When I bring up my concerns, which is often, he breaks down and is apologetic. He says we should marriage counseling but that's as far as that goes. He doesn't change. He doesn't find a counselor. He just moves on about his life and pretends my concerns are resolved with time alone. I'm tired of feeling second best and giving my absolute all for these kids and marriage while receiving nothing in return. I don't really know what else to do. You said it yourself, you're not sure if you want to put that work in anymore. You're feeling resentful. It's hard to come back from those feelings. It's not okay that he doesn't prioritize you, and even completely disregards your needs because he assumes you'll still love him, won't leave him. It seems like inside you kind of already know that you're done. He's not a great person, or a great dad, or a people pleaser. He's a workaholic and a clout chaser who's trained you into accepting his poor treatment of you. He isn't a people pleaser, he is selfish. If you do therapy, do not use a religious one. You will be told he is providing, you need to raise the kids. It is time for you to be selfish and demand a husband, not just a sperm donor. I worked with a guy like this. He was a very successful investment banker and traveled 5/7 days p.w. His wife one day said, "I can't do this anymore. You look after them and I'll let you know when I feel like coming back." And she left. She left for a few weeks and that really kicked him into touch. He made the changes and as far as I'm aware, they're still together. He won't hear you unless you actually end things. My 54M husband, 47M, lost his wedding and engagement rings. Last Friday, my 54M husband, 46M, of 4 years lost both his wedding ring and engagement ring. I'm trying to be supportive but my mood is changing to frustration and anger. I need advice on how to proceed. My husband had what I considered a very bad habit of removing his rings when doing tasks that he thought would damage the rings or that he thought would interfere with the task, such as cooking, lifting weights at the gym, putting on body cream or suntan lotion, or doing dishes. Last Friday morning, either at the gym or at home, he took off the rings, and by mid-morning he couldn't find them. We have turned the apartment upside down looking for them and have asked at the gym throughout the weekend if anyone has turned them in, to no avail. I'm about to go out and put up some signs along the street in the 2 blocks between the gym and the apartment to see if anyone happened to see them. I tried to be supportive the first 2 days. However, today my mood has changed. The rings symbolize the relationship, and what he and I do with the rings have meaning as well. I have never liked that he takes them off. He is trying to protect them from wear, but I see that wear and a symbol of a relationship maturing over time. Beyond that, I see never removing them as a symbol of our lifelong commitment. I can understand that he doesn't have to view the rings in the same way and that this my symbolism that I project onto the rings. However, beyond all of this, it makes it more likely that they will be lost the more frequently he or I take them off. I consider it incredibly careless that he took them off that morning, doesn't even remember where he took them off, and then lost them. I've tried to be supportive the last 2 days, but today I am getting angry. He was incredibly careless and as a result, 2 rings that are irreplaceable are now gone. He's clearly upset about it, and I recognize that it could have happened to either of us. Case in point, last year the engagement ring was getting loose on my finger, so we took it in to have it tightened. In the weeks leading up to that, I was paranoid that the ring would slip off my finger and that I would inadvertently lose it. And just to add another layer of symbolism and subtext, my husband is a widow. He was with another partner for 20 years who died of prostate cancer 7 years ago last week. So in the same week as the 7th anniversary of his death, he loses 2 symbols of our commitment to each other. Was it Freud who said, "There are no accidents"? Advice on how to handle this situation would be greatly appreciated. I also wonder how other couples have dealt with this or a similar situation. Too long did not read. My husband lost his wedding ring and engagement ring last Friday. I tried to be supportive, but now I'm getting angry. I need advice on how to deal with this. 2 rings that are irreplaceable are now gone. No, they are not irreplaceable. Everything is replaceable, including spouses. The rings on your finger don't make a relationship stronger. How you treat each other does, and it sounds like you are about to treat your partner like shit and go all passive-aggressive on him for something that happens. This is why we have little dishes all over our house. Wash your hands, put it on the dish. Do dishes, put it on the dish. Shower, dish. Maybe try that if you can find them. I lose shit all the time, and this is my way of making sure my important thing stays where I know I can always find it. If it's not on my finger, it's in one of the dishes. Those are all activities that they recommend you remove rings for. He's not the first person to misplace his wedding ring, and he won't be the last. He's had them for 4 years, so he can't be that careless. I'd forgive him personally. Go find a new ring together. I totally understand your feelings. My husband lost his ring and managed to find it. But it sent me into a weird spiral, and I was unreasonably upset because of the symbolism. Looking back, with a more rational mind, I can see that things get lost by accident all the time. Accidents are accidents. But the weight of symbolism makes it more painful. Perhaps you need some more reassurance from him in this time, but also, please remember it is only an object. The promise you made and the memories are beyond simple possessions. Give him some grace and find a way forward if you can. This is what marriage is about, the decision to come back together after the small painful moments that try to drive you apart. It's a fucking ring. You're putting all of that weight on a fucking ring? I, F, 31, found out my boyfriend, M, 38, is telling his family he wants to break up with me. Yesterday I had overseen a text conversation with his sister, whom I've never met. She has been asking him to come visit her and her family and to bring me with him. He responded back with, "Things aren't good between us." She responded back with the quintessential, "If things aren't good, maybe you should move on," and he responded back with, "Yeah, probably will." This was basically the extent of their conversation, but I was left in shock. I was so disgusted that even though I had kept it to myself, I made up an excuse and slept in the other room, and we haven't spoke since. This isn't the first time had overheard a conversation I wasn't meant to. There was another time he was talking to his brother about my family, and it wasn't great, but I understand people are entitled to their opinions of other people, and I let that one go. We argue about the typical relationship woes. Sometimes things get more heated depending on the topic. Over the years it is clear to see that we've grown into different people. He drinks a lot and I don't drink at all. He still wants to party. I'd rather eat dinner and watch something with our dog. He has clear definitions as to what the woman's duties are and what the man's is. This is something I'm okay with, but when I push back from time to time coupled with drinking, he turns into a nasty man. Overall, he's a pretty miserable guy. He works an incredibly hard labor job and has a grim outlook on life. He spends his time outside of work pursuing the internet for bad news. He's a pretty closed-minded guy and is set off easily by what he sees in the news and harbors those feelings and projects them back onto me. I haven't addressed the text exchange with him, and I'm not exactly sure how to, since I wasn't meant to see it. How do I address it? A part of me feels like this is the least of my issues considering the type of person he is and the blowback repercussions it will have. Like I should be prepared to end it all. Pack up my things and the dog and close this chapter of my life. Who cares why he wants out? Why don't you is the bigger question. Do it first. Then find out why he wanted to. Why confront? It won't end well. Just pack your shit and leave. There are much better men out there. A part of me feels like this is the least of my issues considering the type of person he is and the blowback repercussions it will have. Like I should be prepared to end it all. Pack up my things and the dog and close this chapter of my life. I think you already know what you need to do. Orange heart, it seems to me like you, naturally, of course, are only being held back by your residual feelings. That's perfectly understandable. But from an outsider's point of view, this guy is such a loser and does not treat you right. Please break up with him, and refer to this post often if you doubt yourself. Your head is going to catch up to your heart really soon, I promise. Don't address it. Plan the exit strategy if you live together, and if you are living separately, just break up now on your own terms. Never try to convince someone to be with you. The right person needs no convincing. I, M36, got blackout drunk and now can't care for my kids. Left them to my wife, F34. Okay, maybe some additional context needed. Have a wife, a toddler, and a newborn. For years I've been struggling with burnout, and since the new girl came along it's been much worse. I'm always the last one in bed, getting caught up on work and funding our stupidly lavish lifestyle. I spent $30K a year when I was single. I'm always the first one up making breakfast and unloading the dishwasher and taking the dogs out. I haven't had a real day off in years. My wife, in contrast, has had many days off and multiple vacations in Europe with her friends while I stayed home and took care of the toddler, before our girl was born. She's only now starting to recognize my burnout. This is how bad it got. A few days ago I screamed at her, literally top of my lungs screaming. I never did that before. And normally she would not put up with that at all. Fuck that, she's a grown woman, she doesn't have to put up with a psycho dipshit losing his shit. But she wasn't even angry. She realized I'm just hanging on by a thread and trying to keep my shit together. Which brings us to last night. I just wanted to watch the fights and unwind. I drank a bottle of wine, and wasn't even halfway through the main card and didn't feel even slightly buzzed. Which is super unusual for me. I'm a cheap date and usually a bottle of wine is more than enough to get me fucked up. So I open another bottle and I don't know what happened, but I drank it all. Probably came to bed after 1 a.m. Now I can barely function, and my wife is having to deal with the kids by herself, and normally I wouldn't feel bad at all, but the delivery was super rough for her, and the timing is just bad and unfair for her. She is a good and loving mother, has a full-time job, does more than her fair share. We have our relationship issues though. I'm just trying to keep my shit together and failing hard. I love my kids. How do I hold it together and break this cycle of self-fuckery? So, you are working yourself to death in order to maintain a stupidly lavish lifestyle? Of course you shouldn't be screaming at her, and drinking that much alcohol is a terrible way to cope. I suggest getting yourself to a psychiatrist, as you sound like you've got depression. More importantly, look very closely at your expenses and try to figure out a way to cut back. European vacations are a want, not a need, and your focus needs to be on needs. This includes keeping your sanity. Sounds like you're about 2 seconds away from a mental breakdown, mate. Please speak to a doctor. Sounds like symptoms of depression. People can only maintain stress for so long. Trade the European vacations, or whatever luxuries, for extra childcare and household help and go from there. First, stop with the drinking. I get that it's giving you relief right now, but ultimately it's going to make things worse. Second, see your doctor. Tell him, her what you're going through. Ask for help. Third, therapy. There's a way out of this untenable situation. You clearly need to make some positive changes for yourself. It's a lot faster and easier to do with a trained professional who has that third-party insight. Can you get a little time away? You mentioned that your wife is able to take solo vacations. Can you take one to decompress and think? Rally some help, support for your wife while you're gone? You can do this. Tomorrow see a doctor for your burnout symptoms and get help.